All right, so the other day I was watching Louder with Crowder, his new video on what he thinks the future of the right looks like, and there are a lot of things that he got right. I love like the policy and direction that he wants the party to move in, but I think he got a few things wrong too, as far as including different sects of people and how to truly garner the most support for the movement. So Crowder lists two main factions in this kind of debate. He has one that issues out what he calls purity tests. So he believes that these people are more for like a smaller Republican Party, not the party itself, but like who like should truly qualify like as being part of its alliance. These people kind of issue purity tests and want to make sure what that party and movement stands for isn't being subverted. His other faction is uh, people saying that the Republican tent needs to be as big as possible, and that even if you don't agree with all of the like main topics, that you can still be a part of the Republican movement. He then says that he looks at it through the same lens as like national and state borders. So, for example, his national borders are what he views as like incredibly important, the main topics. Everyone has to agree on these. So I'll put up the picture here of what those things are. To read them out, they are free speech, the right to bear arms, strong borders, strong military, in terms of defense, pro Christian values, a pro traditional or nuclear family, and pro life. And then his second example, which I'll put up right here, is his state policies, which are his negotiable and non. They're important to the movement, but they're not like critical to it. So the things he's willing to debate on are the degree of pro-lifeness that people uh, see in states, because there's only a realistic amount you can do with uh, kicking abortion rights back to the states. He's willing to debate on how much economic regulation is necessary to balance markets and open commerce. And then also the approach to containing Islam as a political force. Okay, and then he gives at the end two what he calls litmus tests. So the first of those being his national issues. If you don't agree with one of those national issues, you're just not a part of the Republican movement. And then his second litmus test is, which I actually agree with here, is if you spend more time punching right than you do punching left, you're not a part of the movement, especially on fringe issues. So his state issues, if you spend more time attacking the right over their opinions and values on fringe issues than you do on those on the left, you're not a part of the movement. So that's kind of like the summary of what his video goes into, and I'll kind of start my reaction here. First of all, I agree with all of his national and like important critical issues. The one I kind of want to explain a little bit is his one about Christianity. I personally am not Christian, but I do hold their values and morals extremely high. I would say that I practice those values while I don't practice the religion, and therefore it's really important to me, and I think those values go a long way in everyone. So my main disagreement and kind of my point for making this video is I fully believe that if you don't have one of his core, as he calls, national values, you can still be a productive part of the Republican movement. For instance, I think you can be a Republican in many regards, but then happen to be pro-choice, or you could happen to have Islamic faith or Jewish faith or Hindu faith, whatever, like a different faith other than Christianity. So you can have different values like that, and you can have a different stance on abortion, which I mean is for the most part like a wedge issue, and you're not going to be a Republican if you're pro-choice for the most part, but it is possible, and I know there's people like that. So you can be a Republican with those things and still push the general Republican philosophy without being a detriment to it. So, to put it more succinctly, you can have views that differ from off the shelf or mainstream Republican values, but still be a general force for good in its movement. One of the things Crowder says in this video is that the right is more open to debate on issues of just really any kind. And I 100% agree with this. If you just go out in public and see people interviewing protesters, they're almost always like right wing when they're independent journalists. So they're willing to have the conversation and debate. But I think he's being a little bit hypocritical here because he is saying that the right's more open to debate, but if you don't agree with one of his core values, you're instantly ousted from the Republican movement, which just doesn't track. I also think this sets a really dangerous precedent. As he said, like the right's more open to debate than the left. And I think if you start saying that people are ousted from the Republican Party and movement if they disagree on one value that's like part of its core, um, you lose what I'm going to call the comparative advantage that we have to the left, in that you're going to make Republicans quieter and less willing to debate and discuss their like difference in opinions, because they're going to be so scared of being essentially canceled by the right. So I think it's something you have to be careful with. I think that there is a certain set of values that the Republican Party needs to have, and that if people don't fit those, like they're obviously not going to be a Republican. But there's room for difference in opinion in the Republican Party, and I think that needs to be preserved. The left, to me, is very cookie cutter, and the right's not, which makes it a lot more beautiful in my opinion, because having a difference in opinion is what free speech is all about. That's the first core value that he lists, and I think it's that way for a reason. The Republican Party is meant to protect free speech, and by telling people that you can't be a part of the movement because you have one or two values that are different, I don't think promotes free speech. I think it does the opposite. But anyways, that's just kind of my 2 cents. Again, I agree with all the core principles that he lays out in policy and just like in implementation in the real world. I just think how he's kind of going about saying people need to follow them is off. But yeah, like and subscribe. He gives what he calls two different litmus tests. Whoa. Tests. 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 California accent. I can't say the T. It's not a fucking thing.